Well, what's the crack? How are you getting on? You're all very welcome to episode 112 of Buckshot for Friday the 17th of May 2019. What in the jizz? We made it! Fine week. It's supposed to be a fine weekend. We made it through the fucking week, lads. Fair play to you. As Patreons, you'll be hearing this early. You'll be hearing this on the 16th. So, yeah, there you go. Them's are the perks of being a Patreon, gang. Like that, if you fancy donating to the podcast, it'd be great. It does, everything helps for no new gear, all the rest of it, and just kind of setting aside time to actually do it. So, thank you very much, the Buckshot Patreon people. Yeah, you get the back catalogue of the Tom and Jerry show, and you get it early on Tuesday as well, or sometimes even Monday of the Ramble Pot, and there's the live video feed. If you can jump on at any time and give me some shit, that'd be great. So, also there's a Tea Republic shop for any merch. Some stuff went to Abu Dhabi this week. Fair play to the Abu Dhabi lads. I have no idea what it was. Just told me I made a sale and it's gone to Abu Dhabi. I'm assuming it's Irish people living in Abu Dhabi. It'd be class either way. But fair fucking play to you. Fair play to you. Gig this weekend. I'm in Chaplin's Comedy Club on Saturday night. I think I told you about it on Tuesday. For any further gigs, that Cold Rain one, tickets are selling for that. For Defending the Caveman on October 10th. So that's the first one to go up on sale. So I'll put the link in the show notes of this as well for any of the what you need to know. But like that, just go to tommahoney.com/gigs if you need to find me anywhere. Right, moving swiftly along to today's guest. Today's guest, he is a proud Tipperary man. Powerful crack. If you ever listen to Today FM with Ian Dempsey in the mornings, you'll have heard this man's voice. It's instantly recognisable. And he's only just after leaving him, after 22 years with Today FM. So hot out of the oven, I wanted to get my hands on him. And I've always wanted to chat to him anyway. And like that, he didn't disappoint. He was powerful crack the whole way through. Paul Collins from West Tipperary. I don't know why I did West Tipperary, because they don't say West, they say West Tipperary lad. Or West Tipperary kid. What's the crack? It was brilliant crack. This one could have gone on for ages. Jesus, it could have gone on for ages. But Paul had to tear away for a plane to the UK off high rolling it over there. So please sit back, enjoy the brilliant Paul Collins. Paul Collins. Do you know, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you. The money, I just couldn't turn it down, Tom.
And the handy thing, if you find out, the great thing about them all SM58s, they'll follow you everywhere around this room anyway.
SM58s, what are they now?
The microphone in your hand.
Oh, good. Yeah, you've been very fancy.
I thought I would, because you're such a radio bloke.
Well, that. No, we just turn up and talk, so whatever's there, as the fellas says. You know?
I found out this week when I was telling people that Paul Collins is coming on, I realised everybody loves Paul Collins.
I don't know about that. I'll tell you, there's plenty out there who would counter that view, Tom.
I don't know.
And I'll tell you one thing, you wouldn't have to look very hard for him.
I've no fucking doubt. But everybody is this way. Jeez, I love him. Is he going off the radio? I was like, he is, yeah. But it just, nobody, normally people go, you know, they reply to whoever, going, oh, cool, yeah, I saw him in such and such. But everybody this week, they loved Paul Collins.
Very nice to hear. And look, I feel that I'm a part, and a part of my life, and a very special part of my life has been part of a brilliant family.
Yeah.
Working with Ian Dempsey, working with Mary Rosenstock, working in the Today FM family, it was just an unbelievable journey, Tom. And I suppose this is the first time I would have spoken to anyone outside the family, as the fella says, since my exit. But look, the time was right, and they say if you jump, a parachute will appear.
Yeah.
No, I was too busy in Punchestown last week to see if the parachute had appeared. So hopefully one will appear in due course. I have my own business, and I just felt, look, no more than yourself, jacking into civil engineering and starting your own stand-up. You know, it's a case of saying, well, where are you going to be in 10 years' time? And ultimately, my own business had started to develop, and the opportunity arose. And I said, sure, look, we'll give it a last. Sure, there might be a job in Tipperary down the line doing death notices or something.
I was just going to say it.
If it doesn't work out, as the fellow says.
And the only place I can ever do, I have a bit about the death notices down in Tip, and the only place I can ever do it is properly, and where it really has impact is when I'm in Tip doing a gig, and I was in Kerrell, and I had such joy doing this bit about, listen, to the old lad loving the deaths coming on, like the obituary coming on. Did you start out in Tip Midwest?
I did, yeah. And they wouldn't give me a job in Tip FM, but sure, look, I suppose they had the right idea at the time. And I actually, would you believe how I started in radio, Tom, was my late great mother.
Right.
Would you believe? And it's, as you would know, having made the transition from civil engineering to standing on stage or talking publicly, it's not that easy of a thing to do. And even if you're used to doing it, it's not that easy of a thing to do. So my, if you like, public speaking began with Ladybird books.
Stop.
When my mother would work with me on the homework and everything else. And then she was so proud of her protege that we'd go down to the neighbours and say, Paul is after getting a new Ladybird book there today. Do you want to hear him read? Do you? Oh, go on. So,
and you'd stand up in front of the fireplace.
And off I'd go with, Peter has a dog and Spot has a ball and Peter and Spot are playing with the ball. And ultimately, fast forward a few years, and my mum also told me before, I went to Doon CBS in Limerick. I think I'd say I could have only been 10 or 11, and she said, I reckon you're going to be a journalist when you grow up.
Really?
And to be honest with you, I didn't even know what a journalist was, and some would argue I still don't know what a journalist is. But in due course, she was very artistic as a woman herself. Like, they had a pub in West Tipperary.
Right.
And I'll tell you one thing, that was some education growing up.
Oh, man.
And, she was very artistic and, would love to paint, and had, in our room, for example, we had Disney characters on the wall and all this kind of stuff. Great woman. And she was very much about being who you want to be and doing what you want to do and maximising your talents.
It's very forward thinking.
It was.
You're thinking like, an inland county.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say inbred county.
I wouldn't say it about our own.
We have the paperwork to prove otherwise, Tom. But yeah, it was. And it was a great upbringing. We were just talking about that earlier. It was a very simple time. Fellas were mad about seeing the hay cut and
hurling
and playing the ball when the meadows were down. And, it was a great childhood. And ultimately, as an extension of that, she encouraged me to go into Tipperary Community Radio and do a demo tape.
Yeah.
And the next thing, they invited me back a week later to do another.
What age were you?
Half an hour. I was 16.
16 is all?
Yeah, 16. And then I sort of got the idea that, I kind of, believe it or not, was uncomfortable with the idea of talking and recording and doing things like that.
Which is natural.
And, and then eventually what happened was I did it a second time, and the second show was entered into a young DJ show on 2FM.
Right.
So I actually won that. And then ended up doing a show with Simon Young, who also ironically worked with Ian. And so I did that and went over to the BBC and all that, and kind of got the bug for music and radio and all that. And thought at the time, in my innocence, Tom, that a multi-million euro contract would be dropping down on the doorstep in West Tip. But as it turns out, it kind of lit a flame of music and everything else, and I ended up DJing.
Yeah.
Around Bancha and around Clonalty and Borlahan. And but I'll tell you one thing: the biggest education I ever had was that pub in that Mum and Dad.
Absolutely, had, the best stuff happens in pubs.
Well, even it teaches you so much about life, and I really sympathise with rural publicans today.
Oh, man.
You take it. There's a big debate about rural broadband, and look, people in rural areas to a large extent are second-class citizens.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that you can't go down to town and get a bus home, or you have to make arrangements for that. It's very difficult on older generation, and there's no broadband and everything else. So when you look at the history of rural Ireland through creameries or pubs, you can see a real change. And in our case, Mum and Dad had the pub, and there were different times, and even I have various stories of that, which I can or can't bore you with, depending. But amongst them are, for example, going to Munster Championship matches in Limerick and parking in Woodfield House after the game at the Gaelic grounds. Not me now, my dad. Lads getting into their car after a few pints in Woodfield, driving out to Capmore, another few pints, driving into Capwhite, a few pints in Hannah's. Next thing, came out, car, flat tyre. And at that time in rural Ireland, Tom, guards were actually doing patrols in rural Ireland. So there was two boys patrolling Capwhite, so the story goes. Saw the flat tyre, saw the two boys looking at it, said to the two boys who'd been on the beer all day, "Hey boys, throw us out the keys there, we'll change that for you, sure."
Stop.
Change the tire, threw the key back, and away you go. So I'm not justifying that as a policing method, but it just is reflective of, you know, how we've changed completely in terms of
you say that, it brought back an old memory. I remember coming down from it was a Limerick tip match, but it was an All-Ireland semi-final, I think. And the whole way back, I remember there was pints. No, I was only a young fella.
Yeah.
But there was pints being stopped for.
Yeah. And also, like, even as a publican, you know, and again, drink responsibly, kids,
of course,
and all that. But ultimately, you know, it's a business, and unfortunately, due to depopulation and everything else, there are no people anymore in a lot of towns. If you drove from Belmullet to Bantry, you know, outside of the tourist spots, you know, there's a lot of villages and towns there and rural areas that had dance halls and stuff like that aren't there anymore. I'm not saying that's any better, but I'm just saying the people who are in the scenario have had to readjust. But in the midst of it all, you know, as kids, we collected glasses and we understood the value of working. And, you know, I remember once there was a fella, a next door neighbour of ours from Anacarty, Paddy Pajero was his name.
I already love it.
No, I don't need to explain to a man from Bansha what Paddy Pajero means or why he was called Paddy Pajero. But needless to say, he drove a Land Cruiser.
I fucking knew it.
So Paddy anyway came in one day, and he had a tradition. Like, he'd come in, he might go for a pint after mass or after the creamery, or a pint and a half one. But he was mad about the Sunday game.
Right, yeah.
And by the way, just so as you know, my mother and father had the first colour television in Tipperary.
The county of Tipperary.
County of Tipperary. It was in the Nationalist. RTV rentals, £2 a week, rented for the pub in Tipperary.
Go away.
Yeah, and I remember Dad, God rest him, showing me the parish notes one day, saying, "Hey, we're after making it into the Anacarty notes. Congratulations to Mara and Martin Collins there, the first colour Tipperary television." But Paddy came in and he liked the idea of, you know, watching the game and everything else. But the Pajero came in one day and he had a kind of routine, Tom. So he'd come in around 6 or 7 o'clock, have a half one, have a few pints, get ready for the Sunday game. And at that time, you know, the Sunday game didn't finish till around 11:30. So it was pushing the closing time, if you get me. And eventually, anyway, one night he was there, and the mother says, "Hey, go out there and collect them glasses, will you?"
Yeah.
So I was going around anyway, and the next thing I went up to Paddy, and I says, "Well, Paddy, how are you going?" "Fuck this," he says.
That was his reply.
"Paddy, what's wrong with you?" Fair not looking forward to going home. I said, "What's wrong with you? Is it the wife?" "What is it?" Or, "'Tis the wife," he says. "And what is it?" I said, "Is she anti-drink or what?" "This now, 11 o'clock at night." And I said, is it? Does she not like you drinking or what way is it? "No, I'll tell you, it's like this," he said. "She's sitting outside in the Pajero since 6:30. So, further evidence, Tom, how times have changed over the years. So that's a kind of a rough idea of what kind of a community
that
was.
Is it, like that. I can think of the exact same bloke, but it was a high ace he had. But the wife would sit out and eating ice creams. She'd sit outside in the van.
It was an innocent time, right? And look, no one's justifying that or saying that's the way it needs to be. Although, you know, the idea of having a designated driver outside waiting for you.
It's very forward thinking.
Very, very nice. But like, I also remember, and this is, you know, our version of crazy.
Yeah.
Was like 12 lads in a sunbeam going to the rag on a Sunday night with Coolchi.
To the rag.
And like, if the car turned over, sure, we're all stoned dead.
Oh my God.
You know, so this was the...
We used to go to the Thatch in Emily.
Yeah. Very good spot as well. And like, it was funny, like, and the Divilment lads got up to, and I won't say who this was now, but there was a fella telling me, and it's up near you there, near Kilshan, that what they used to do. Now, kids of today would go, "Oh my God, like, where's the Xbox? What's going on?" But what they used to do was, and it just sounds so stupid now, but what they used to do was they were in the Abbey CBS, and they'd go out, there's a bend there in Kilshan, and what they used to do was let on they were holding a rope in a tug of war. So 3 lads either side of the road would kind of hold an imaginary rope, just to see what the reaction of passing drivers would be. Now, 9 times out of 10, if you had a creamery milk lorry from Tip Co-op, it'd steam through and say, look at the apes on the side of the road.
yeah.
But there were others who kind of slowed down and said, oh my God, I'm going to lose my windscreen. To cue hilarity from the lads.
Yeah.
So it was just a very innocent time, a good crack, and loved it.
Up the road from there, just as you brought, because we used to do that, but no, we didn't do it out in main roads, all right, but I remember driving, I was just after getting the driver's license, and I was driving the old lad's car into the Buys, into Tip Town.
Third party fire and theft.
Oh, you know it, and the thing wasn't worth fucking €30, an old cadet, it was in shit, but just up from Kilshan, just almost into Tip Town, were they bull Ryans? They were Ryans. They were, but with a nickname, because there are so many Ryans, they have to have a nickname.
So many stories about nicknames of Ryans. Go on,
yeah.
Yeah.
But there was at the top of their road, there was a rucksack. And I pulled over and I said, fuck it. I said, would you steal a rucksack? What do I do here? And there was so many choices. I said, fuck it, I'll leave it. I'll leave it altogether. No, I'm fucking going to go back to it. So I'll bring it into the guards. That's what I'll do. So I took it into the car anyway, put it into the boot of the car, drove in, pulled up outside the whatchamacallit. The barracks in Tip Town. And I said, I'll give the bag a quick look anyway first to see what's in it. Because this was a time when you didn't worry about fucking chicken coming from Opened it up.
Explosions.
Just full to the neck with slurry.
Go away.
Poured all over the boot of the old lad's car.
And the boys were probably laughing.
Roaring
behind
fucking
the ditch.
laughing. School, Monday morning school. The two Ryans came up to me, roaring, laughing. He goes, did you get the bag? Did you? You rotten fucker. Spend the weekend cleaning cow shit.
Just be thankful, Tom, that it wasn't the age of mobile phones and YouTube and capturing stuff. Because, to be fair, I'm sure it would have been a huge viral hit.
Oh, yeah.
But you've reminded me, like, in rural Ireland, like, meadows and cars and all that, when you're growing up, are have a big impact on cans and things. But I'm always remember a friend of mine who was going to school, and mass and all that was always a big thing that time as well. And the statue of the priest. Dad was actually told, because mum and dad met in the UK.
Right.
Both were bus drivers on London Transport. He was a driver, she was a conductor, and I arrived and they moved home, so they bought a pub in Tipperary. He was from Clare, she was from Sligo, and eventually, anyway, they bought the pub, and they were kind of doing up the pub, and they were adding the mod cons,
right?
Like the colour television.
Yeah. I was going to say notions there, but I left it off.
And the father thought that he would have a stage for a ballad session.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
And at the time in Ennicarty, there was people nowadays again, kind of who weren't around that time, may not have realised that if you didn't put a few pound into the collection, your name could be read out at the top of the church. And other things that are crazy like that, which are rightly evaporated from our society.
Thank God, yeah.
But at the time, anyway, the canon came to the father.
Oh, Jesus.
And said, Martin, how are you doing? Yeah, I hear on the grapevine there that you're thinking of building a stage in the pub.
Right.
The father said, yeah, sure, we'll have a right session there, get a few old, accordions, and away we go.
Yeah.
I'm not sure this is a road the parish needs to be going down, was what the canon told me. So,
as if he was putting in a poll for some dancers, like.
Stop. That would have been, I'd say, that was later in the years, but anyway. But it was, it was a mad time, Tom, and, just coming through it was quite funny. There was a story I'm sure I was going to tell you that'll come back to me. Oh, yeah, anyway, around that time, going to school, and people in school can be very cruel.
Yeah.
So this particular family, anyway, and dads at that stage used to drop off the kids and off they go park in the car.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about you, but generally we'd arrive in, if mass was at 11:30, we'd arrive in around 11:27 and 30 seconds, right? So this particular day, just to make you feel better about your slurry bag, this family were pulling up outside the church and outside the main gate, and like everyone, in the community was buzzing in and buzzing out. And this was actually in Tip Town, and so there was all the posh lads were around, and all the townies were around, and various things like that. So we're going in anyway, and the next thing, this family who are from Palace Green direction pulled up outside. Kids came out of the car, and my classmate, then it was an Escort or a Ford Escort, 1979, I'd say. But anyway, family, mother got out, kids got out, and he slammed the door of the car shut. Only for the car door to come off in his hand. Outside Mass.
How lucky were you to witness
on a
that?
Sunday.
Oh my God.
Not only that, Tom, the poor young fella had to carry the door of the car around to the back of the car. The father had to open the boot and he had to put the door into the boot of the car. And beeping and, hey, what's going on down there, lads? Hurry on, will you? 11:30. Oh, stop. It was some crack.
How fast did you run out of the church to see him drive away?
Oh, stop, yeah. I'll tell you, I think he got double pneumonia on the way home anyway.
Because that's some Smokey and the Bandit shit, isn't it? Just, oh my.
Stop.
So you were DJing. So you were up to the point now you were DJing around the country doing teenage discos.
I wouldn't say around the country now, but around the county anyway. The West Tip, places like Hollyford.
Right, yeah.
Places like Banshee, Clonolty, Borlahan. But the first ever disco I did was in Dundrum House Hotel, which is
subsequently burnt down, isn't it?
Well, it's in its own financial issues right now, and we don't know where it's all going to end up. But it was, at the time, it was kind of a centre of disco.
Always some
activity.
spot.
Yeah, and again, the Crow family. I met Willie recently, and you should get Willie Crow on. He has great stories about.
And they have the butchers as well.
They're related, yeah.
Right.
Willie Crow and his dad owned the Golden Veil.
Right.
So amongst my claims to fame, Tom, were playing for warming up the crowd before Smokey.
No way. Before Smokey?
For whenever they came. And the Golden Veil at that stage, there was thousands going there.
Yeah.
I find it hard to believe. Unfortunately, it's in rack and ruin now. But I remember paying 20 quid in at midnight to see Gina Dale Hayes and the Champions one New Year's Eve.
20 quid?
Yeah. I was saying to Willie, if I got back all the money I gave you over the years, I'd be a rich man. He said, Paul, if I still had all the money over the years, I'd be better off altogether. So, this is what, and I remember at that stage, we'd walk down there from a punter's point of view. So, people thought that when I was on radio, which I was at the time, on local radio, that then I knew about DJing. And to be honest, I didn't, but I said, sure, there can't be much to it. So I remember for the Debs of Doon CBS, Lorna Hughes, I think, was one of the chief organisers, and a few girls from Doon were organising this. And I think one of the Hannahs from Capel White. And,
right.
They said, sure, Paul, you'll be able to do the DJ there. So I said, sure, can't be much to it. Tom, it was the worst ever DJ of all times performance. And so much so, I bought Now 5 or Now whatever.
Yeah, now.
Now that's what I call music. And it was so bad, one of the girls came up and said, Paul, do you want me to take over there?
Not even trying to be patronising.
I think one of the things I from memory, and it's nearly 30 years ago, but from memory, I think one of the things that I didn't do was bring a set of headphones to cue up the songs. And the second thing was I didn't have any gear, so I had to rent in the gear, so it was all a trauma. But on the flip side of that, Tom, what I said was, look, the way I look at this now is, there's no possible way I can do ever a gig as bad as this ever again. And so it ended up that, we had great years, in UL doing college class discos, and Berrangley, I discovered, is still there in UL. They were great times as well. And then myself and Mel O'Kane, who's now in Boston.
Right.
He took the records off me, and he ended up we were in a house together in UL in Castletry. And he followed me up then doing the discos in the college. And the two of us had a great idea that in the 80s that we would go to Germany and we would bring two big cases of records that were, I'd probably give an estimate of about 20 or 30 bags of sugar in them, carrying them around, as well as our rucksacks, to see could we actually do discos in Germany. Nowadays, you probably have 10 times that on your mobile phone.
Yeah.
So that was, and then after, what happened was then, as a result of all that, and doing the radio show, a guy I knew, Dion Breen, who I think is in Spain now, he asked me, and Father Seamus Rochford, who was another man up around Tip and Emily, he, local radio was starting at the time, Tom. So quite a few people who had been involved in that radio station that my mother dropped me into. It was like Moses in a basket. She would collect me at Doon CBS on a Friday, and I'd go in and do a show live then on the evening after the set of false teeth found outside the church gate notices were read out. And so I did that for about a year. And then when Tipperary Community Radio became Tipperary Midwest Radio,
Yes.
it coincided with me graduating from college in UL, not knowing what I wanted to do. And I ended up getting a job in the newsroom there.
Right.
And then that led to Dion then moved to Waterford, and I was invited to go for a job in WLR FM.
Okay.
And I worked in Waterford for 7 years, and then I was invited to go to Today FM. So when I went to Waterford, that was a bit of a culture shock, obviously, because
Waterford, like,
you know, you're down there, and now it wasn't too much of a culture shock, but like you're moving away from home and things like that.
yeah.
I always remember the first gig actually that I was asked to do as a news reporter in Waterford was go to the county council meeting.
Yeah. Right.
So
some crack
at that. So the county council meetings in Waterford are in Dungarvan, right? So Dion said to me, and I said it was Des Whelan, who was the manager there, a great man as well. And at the time, Charlie Haughey was in vogue. So when I applied for the job, I had a photo of me interviewing Charlie Haughey on the front of the CV. I don't know if that counted for anything.
Jeez, that was cute, wasn't it?
But got the gig anyway. And the first job assignment I had, they said, will you go down to the county council meeting in Dungarvan, and hey, we'll give you the company car.
Stop.
And I said, lovely hurling, threw me the keys, jumped into the car, drove down the keys in Waterford, down to Grattan Key, pulled up outside Sempre Tires and said, well, lads, how are you going? Come here. Which way is Dungarvan? That was before sat-navs and things like that, Tom. So I eventually found myself there.
Which way is Dungarvan?
But in a crazy setup, a fella who I sat beside, who was a great character, John Murphy, who wrote for The Examiner for many years, sadly passed away. I also sat beside a fella who is known as Ariel Macmurraku, who is the head of Nematon, which produces much of the live GA content for TG Carr.
Right. So
both of us ended up moving forward from covering Waterford County Council meetings to the media subsequently.
Yeah.
So that was good crack.
Because I do remember, I loved Tipperary Midwest when we were in Tiptown, because we used to ring up nearly knowing that they would not have the song.
Yeah.
You knew full, and you'd get Bridie or whatever, and you'd say, smack my bitch up by the Prodigy.
Oh, there's a man cursing on the phone.
They have a man. Well, you'd ask for, do you have Jump Around by the, by House of Pain? We don't have that, but we have Declan Nerney, and that'll do you. You know, and it was, but it was you being put back in your box, so you jumping from there then. But you got it. How long? You spent 7 years then in Waterford.
Yeah.
You definitely didn't. Yeah, thank God. You still have your strong accent anyway, but you didn't pick up that Waterford accent.
No, well, but
there is a joy to that. I listened to, my wife had never heard John Milan before until we were driving yesterday, and because I watched the Tip match, and just the tail end of it, I wanted to hear bits and pieces afterwards. And John Milan, he's a joy, isn't he?
Yeah. I could tell you several stories about John Milan, Tom, but unfortunately, no microphones would have to be allowed. But he's a great lad, and he's some hurler, and he's a very honest hurler as well. I mean, in the days of going to various committees in Croke Park to overturn rulings for this, that, and the other, he basically said, look, I did the crime, I'll do the time. And, when I came to Waterford, like, there was a bit of, I think when you go away from home, whether you're in the UK, Germany, Australia, or Waterford, your sense of identity is really enhanced. Suddenly if you're in Namibia and Tip are playing, you're looking for where the local TV station or TV feed is. And I think possibly that happened with me because I moved to Waterford in 1991 and Tip were on the rise for a good 12 months before they fell away again. And when I went there, actually, so they had a Tip man doing the sports news, and ultimately it was like, I'll never forget it, in 1993, believe it or believe it not, and I met one of the players from that team recently from Kerry. Kerry bet Waterford in a Munster Senior Hurling Championship match.
Did they?
Yeah.
Jesus.
And the Jim Joe Landers was the reporter at the time, and he actually got the lads singing the Rose of Tralee in the dressing room in Walsh Park.
Right.
And anyway, I thought this was great crack altogether. So, I was on, it's 6 o'clock. It's a sad day for the Daisha. Kerry, champions in Waterford. and I was nearly lynched coming out. But, having said all that, that probably started the rise of Waterford's return to the top table, because subsequent to that, or in tandem with that, you had a very good 1992 under-21 team, which would have provided Paul Flynn, Tony Brown, Fergal Hartley. So basically, Waterford, their rise to GA prominence was occurring at that time. I'm not claiming any credit for it. Yeah, but so it's a great city and a great area. Has had awful deprivation itself, socially in recent years.
Factory-wise and stuff.
I was down there last week, and I was saying to a taxi driver, "Well, how are they going around here?" I'll tell you one thing. He says, "We'd love a job or a factory with about 1,000 jobs, and we'd be grand." Because that's what Waterford Crystal provided at the time. So that was great crack, and I would have been at. I remember. Again, going back to different radio times, and Des Whelan of WLR, if you're listening, switch off now. But I was on the bus when they brought over the Under-21 Hurling Championship trophy from the bridge in Waterford, where the railway station is, to Ballybricken. And there was a fellow on it, again, Roddy Clear, if you're listening, switch off now. Roddy Clear was on that stage on WLR in the evening time.
Right.
And Roddy was there. And the Under-21 Hurling Championship trophy is back in Waterford. Handing over to Paul Collins on the bus. Well, Roddy, how are you doing? Yeah, it's great here. Great crack. Yada, yada, yada. Back to you in the studio. No sound.
Right.
So I ended up having to... Roddy, I think, had gone out to answer a call of nature or one thing or another. But eventually we got back on track anyway. And that was my claim to fame at the time, of seeing Waterford bring the trophy back.
Yeah.
Their next big All-Ireland, opportunity was, and senior, was in 1998 then, when Gerald McCarthy was managing them, and they lost an All-Ireland semi-final in Dublin by 1 point against Kilkenny, having really only, played for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah,
They switched off for 20 minutes. And so the likes of Paul Flynn, Tony Brown, Fergal Hartley, John Mullane, to a latter extent in recent times then, after that, Owen Kelly would have emerged of Waterford, and Stephen Frampton was another big hurler at that time. And, ultimately... people marvel about the GA, Tom, but, a lot of times it's accused of being rooted in the past. But I actually like the fact that we still celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Leitrim's provincial win or Clare's, Munster Championship win, because that's part of your identity.
Yeah.
So, look, they obviously were in a league final this year, and they've a much changed team and a new generation now with Austin Gleeson and Noel Connors and others. But the likes of John Mullane, Tony Brown and Ken McGrath were some of the best hurlers to ever hurl.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I was talking about Milan is because there's a hint of a breath of fresh air about him, and it was the same way with you that the status quo typically when you listen to journalists is that fucking straight down the line, and it's almost to the level of boring. You go, I could listen to any bloke and he'd sound the very same way, but you still got your point across, but there was always a touch of humour too.
Well, I don't know about that, but I suppose what I would say in response to that is that I was very fortunate. It's a bit like the under-21 team in Waterford or the senior team in Waterford. I was lucky to come through a period of radio that had some of the greatest names in it.
Of course,
Ian Dempsey is a fella that, I think recently Mario celebrated 20 years in the business as well. And he did a top 20 of Gift Grub.
Yeah.
Which I was there for most of the top 20. In fact, I think all of it. But, people's descriptions of them were national treasures.
Yeah.
And I think, when one of the beauties of Today FM has been that, it's a voice of people from around Ireland. And when you all come together on a common purpose, that was, I think, a key part of its success. Apart from anything else, obviously other key elements were, Secure and Ian was a big push in the success of the business. But in answer to your question, you'd be alive if you couldn't hold your own with the likes of Rosenstock. They'd sort of bring that out of you, that, if you were going to stay in a corner and say nothing and talk to no one and rock over and back, you wouldn't be long getting a bit of a rude awakening, but just a great team. And I think Ian has a skill that would have dated back to when he started. He's always been in teams himself.
Right, yeah.
And he's just an incredible person. He'd never have a bad word to say. People say, what's he like off the air? And if you've listened to him on the air, He's even nicer than that.
Go away.
Yeah, so that's why, he's managed to succeed in still being a popular radio presenter today, and Mario likewise, who's kind of embellished that and grown his own direction as well.
Yeah, but because there does seem to be kind of a loyalty to that, because like that, Nicky Hayes and a couple other people, it's unbelievable.
Sorry, who?
Yeah, I know.
Joking, Nicky.
But it's in the two radio, I've never seen anything so cutthroat in some points. Like it seems to be a lovely environment, and the bits and pieces of radio I did, but like I had a weekly thing on 2FM, which was basically me a 15 minutes of me ranting in the corner of a show,
Okay.
But on a Sunday, just one Sunday, they went, yeah, no, we're done with that now, Tom. Do you know, it's...
How many weeks did you get out of it?
I got about 6 months out of it.
6 months, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, some would argue that was probably 6 months too long.
I know.
It's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember like one of the other great names that was in there in Today FM was Eamon Dunphy.
Yeah.
And like for every person that thought Eamon Dunphy was great, you'd meet lads saying, "That Eamon Dunphy, what a flute." So look, I think once you stick your head over the parapet into the public, whether it's on stage or whatever, you kind of have to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, as I said, that's why I consider myself very fortunate to have come through radio at the time I did. And, again, being involved in a station like Today FM, which was trying to develop its own voice and went around the country in order to do that. And then, like, other opportunities came up then, to cover events and be at events. And
Yeah.
It's like, again, and we were talking about this earlier in a different context, but, will people work for 10, 20 years in a job ever again?
Possibly not.
Debatable.
Yeah.
I mean, but if you're working in a space that you're happy with, i.e. as a stand-up comedian or as a podcaster, and people like that, and maybe that's what you'll end up doing for 20 years. So I think the world has changed hugely. I mean, we were talking again earlier at a separate thing I was at around how much Ireland has changed. We mentioned rural Ireland, but even the media. So, today the number of websites you have, I discovered that there's a website news for pet owners. Just
there
today.
you go.
Who
there
knew?
you go. Who knew?
So, like, the whole thing has changed, but I think ultimately, and I think that's what the media is trying to work out is, while everything has changed, what is the same, or what are the things that people are still interested in?
Yeah.
And I think those who kind of have an audience, say the likes of yourself or, others who have a unique way of either talking, sharing or curating content, I think those people will still find an audience.
It's always moving, and this is the thing. Like I talked about friends of ours who are ahead of the curve, but you don't know it's the curve until that
was absolutely wiped out for that. I was out of my head for that curve. Where was that?
So people, you do kind of have to stay on top of it. But the thing about podcasting is it's such a langer like me can basically come along, pick up a microphone.
What's that about?
I know. What's that about? There's almost a hint of shame too about it, where you're going, what makes me qualified to do this? Like, but if I find people interested, too, like the likes of you, you could talk for hours on this. So it's,
Well, look, I'm very flattered to be asked to do anything at this stage, given that I have...
I wanted you. You were hot out of the oven.
Right.
I wanted you straight away. I was on you.
But no, look, I think, ultimately Irish people like to crack and like talking.
Yeah.
Now, whether people in charge of format radio realise that or not, that's a separate matter.
Yeah.
But I think today the opportunity to, if you like, here's a question for you, moral dilemma, philosophical question. Is podcasting, the new lads get around the fire and listen to radio?
Yeah.
Or the new reason to bring a community together, albeit not in your parlour, but around the world. So in other words, that's the beauty and curse of a lot of media today, is that there's so much trying to find that what you're interested in and what suits you.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. In the words of the great Bruce Springsteen, 57 channels and nothing going on.
This is reality,
but thankfully, if you're listening to this, obviously you have a great taste in...
There you go.
Discussion and high issues of life.
Jeez, you are smooth, boy. You are smooth.
So I'll write a promo up for you there now and get it out on ASAP.
Brilliant. And so Today FM then, when you were you're in there, you didn't go in straight into sports, did you?
No, I was in as, would you believe, as a news editor initially.
Right.
So I edited the news in Today FM for a few years before I actually went into sport. And I have to say, to be involved in that was a real learning. Conor Kavanagh, who was from RT and then went back to RT, it taught me a lot about editorial judgment. And it's one of the problems today with the web and news and Donald Trump's famous expression, fake news.
Yeah.
With so much information out there, the problem is verifying what's actually correct. And even if it's from a verified source, are they saying stuff that you can stand up? Now, when I was editing the news, I was very privileged to be in charge of major bulletins around things like the Good Friday Peace Agreement.
Right, yeah.
Now, my poor old mother was saying there was a term years ago, an albatross, and if an albatross ever landed on your ship, there was a danger your ship, sailors believed, would sink.
Right.
So in the first, one of the first weekends I was on, Lady/Princess Diana died.
Oh, Jesus, right.
And that was crazy that, I understood the value of a world figure and how it resonated with so many people.
Yeah.
Subsequent to that, Michael Hutchins died. Then another weekend, Paula Hutchins died. And then poor old Mother Teresa. So all these world figures were passing away on my watch and trying to understand who they were in terms of their cultural significance.
Yeah.
Albeit you'd know Michael Hutchins and, where's he from originally and all that. So that was an interesting insight into how the media works and how the world works. Then there was things like the Millennium Bug, which everyone was told your computer's going to explode if you don't pay $2,000 for a new computer. Millennium arrives, and of course, all the computers and planes don't crash. So that was that. But I suppose, look, if you're from, again, rural Ireland, Tom, as you are, and from our neck of the woods, sport is a huge social activity as much as pastime.
Yeah.
So in other words,
it's a necessity as well.
And I noticed the GA have picked up on this, that you could be the worst hurler of all time, with any sort of with no skills whatsoever, and they're now trying to involve you either in administration or maybe involved in some other function in the GA.
Yeah.
Because just because you can't hurl left or right doesn't necessarily mean that you're not a GA fan or whatever. And obviously, we would have had great days going to Munster finals, and you're packing the tins of sandwiches and a flask of tea. And I was actually in Páirc Uí Chaoimh for Tip's great win over Cork this season. And 18 years after one of my greatest days with my dad, we were down there, Tip again in 91, had an incredible year. And I was there with my dad in a Munster final, and a neighbour of ours, Pat Fox.
Pat Fox.
Pat Fox got 1-3 to save the game, bring it up to Thurles. He got Player of the Year that year and Tip won the All-Ireland that year. So I think, and we mentioned Munster rugby as well, those type of connections really resonate.
Yeah.
And resonated with me, and I was very fortunate to be in the midst of doing a bit of news and sport. But I'm going back to that because one of the greatest career highs I ever had was with WLR was going to USA 94.
Stop, did you?
Des Whelan approached me and said, Paul, I'm thinking of sending someone to America for a month to the World Cup, and I'm wondering, would you be interested? And I said,
my good Jesus.
I was always a tough negotiator. And I said, will you leave that with me for a few days and I'll come back to you? And needless to say, I didn't. But so I remember, and a few lads were onto me on the Twitter recently who were talking about that. I went with Harvey Travel in Waterford. So Waterford sent out, a crew of maybe a couple of hundred Waterford supporters in a group.
Yeah.
From Harvey Travel. So it was a bit like the Waterford boys on tour in Orlando and in New York and whatever.
Blaze everywhere.
Oh, stop. And I always remember the first night I arrived, now Des never got this story, so again, Des, if you're listening, switch off now. But the first night I arrived, I was absolutely wrecked. I had nothing to eat. And I said to the boys, where are you going to be? We're going to be in the Irish pub on 42nd, or on 2nd Avenue or whatever. So I said, that's grand. Now, there was about 40 pubs on 2nd Avenue that were Irish, right? So I went into all of them. But in all of them, fellas were saying, sure, have a beer.
Stop.
And I was on these nachos, which I've never touched since. So needless to say, by the time I got to the actual Waterford pub, I was full of beer and nachos. Not for too much longer. And there was a fella called Zico. There was a fella called Zico from Portlaw. Ended up like minding me and minding the recorder and, you know, getting me back to the hotel. And thanks be to God, his intentions were very pure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, God only knows where I would have ended up on the night. But that was the World Cup where we beat the Italians.
Yeah.
And Ray Houghton got the goal, and you know that was all part of that. And I said, God, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. And Jesus, how could you not? A month in America.
Yeah,
oh,
great
stop,
crack,
man.
Great crack. And Jack Charlton and Steve Staunton and all that. And myself and Aidan Cooney, ex of TV3 and 98 FM, were the only two Irish commercial radio lads over there. And it was a great time. And then moving to Today FM, after news, when Ian joined, I was asked to do sport because I had been a regional lad going around to Mary from Dunlow festivals and job losses here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
So I was glad of the opportunity to work with Ian and never look back.
That was unbelievable because that was the bit, and I suppose we talked a lot about Tipperary, and I don't really care. This is my podcast, but I remember there was when you like that you moved to Dublin or I moved to Cork, and you would be. Because I go, that's just such a home. Because there was no digital radio, apps on your phone at the time. So you're like, lovely. And like I remember, that was the bit you're waiting for, Paul.
Very kind
Paul
of you.
would come on.
Look, I'm sure Mario and Ian would have something to say about that. But I think what happened was the good thing. What I found about that era, and it's an era I would love in my life. And guys, it was like when I left, it was like almost emigrating to a new island of self-employment, but thankfully we still see each other again. But the funny thing was, I found that, generally the show agenda that Mario was on, it could be Six Nations or it could be Munster Rugby or whatever. Like we're all on the same, pot.
Yeah.
Like I was listening to Mario the other day. He had a brilliant sketch. Check it out if you didn't. Morgan Freeman is back for the GA this summer. Big GA fan, as you know. But he was saying the hair was standing straighter than bubbles over a 65. And so we'd all have to be talking to each other about, who's this fella, who's that fella, what's going on, and sort of get a sense of it. So and again, I think you have to really enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise, it doesn't, it won't get you very far. So, we had great times. Munster Rugby was emerging as a force at the time. Meeting lads like Mick Galway, Keith Wood, Alan Quinlan. Actually, one, and again, I suppose I was conscious, as I'm sure you would be, Tom, and anyone who's not from Dublin. And I think when you're not from Dublin, it doesn't matter where you're from. There's 31 other counties still on your side.
Yeah.
Much the same in Gaelic football this year. But what I think happens is that people, it resonates with them that you're not from inside the Red Cow roundabout.
Yeah.
Or the M50. And an awful lot of stuff that I enjoyed, I knew I wouldn't have heard were it not for us doing it.
Yeah.
Interviews or stuff like, did the GA show for a good few years with another great lad in Today FM, John Duggan. We won awards, this, that, and the other. So it was a great journey. But ultimately, as you will know, the best interviews are when you're sitting down eyeballing people.
Yeah.
Whether it's Rena Buckley or whether it's Anthony Foley. And sometimes when you're talking to people, I remember speaking to Anthony Foley, the great man, and just at the end of it, feeling that this lad would have me going through a wall.
Really? Yeah, he was that...
if you ask Anthony about Ireland playing England, it was almost like, how dare you ask me? You know what we're going to be like. We're going to absolutely tear their heads off, or whatever the case.
Yeah.
So there were great leaders, unfortunately, who've passed that I was lucky to meet. And Today FM began broadcasting in 1997. Ian's arrival in 1998 really turbo boosted it. And as a result of all that, there were certain things I was at. I was at the Heineken Cup final of 2000, which Munster lost, and Rog had an absolute mare of a day. But it was great crack. If you weren't Rog,
yeah,
whatever. But I mean, it was great crack in that it was a great social event to be at. Not that we were delighted Munster lost
Yeah.
or anything like that. And I suppose from a content point of view, I was there. I met Peter O'Toole and Richard Harris outside.
Did you?
And like they were bonkers and great. And like these were things that I had never heard on radio before that we were now hearing in real time and putting out on Today FM. Outside, I met Ronan O'Gara's mum and dad. And we put that out, you know, that and all, how Ronan felt, how did his mother and father feel.
Oh my God, yeah.
So it was all kind of insights into what was happening in sport or whatever. And Richard Harris, like he was saying, you know, he felt that he was, like I was saying earlier, an albatross for Munster rugby.
I remember hearing something about that. He thought he was bad luck for him, yeah.
On that day, he said, their first shot at the European Cup, how could I stay away? And going, well, look, you're grand. You know, at the end of it, I'm
we won't hold it
against
you.
Get out of the dressing room. They were saying at the end, I'm sure. But he, like, meeting people like that as a result of the job you have is a real thrill, Tom. And one of the things Richard Harris said was, you know, sometimes I think I'd really love to have done that. And then I think, oh, actually I did.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten.
Yeah,
so he was a fellow who loved life and, you know, loved being out there and also meeting players, finding out what made them tick. And I remember when Alan Quinlan got the lines.
Oh my God.
We had him on. And like I don't know if he was bawling more than I was bawling or whatever, but unfortunately he was crying more so a few days later when he
Leo
was
Cullen
dropped
incident,
from the tour, much to his ongoing dismay. But like, you know, meeting lads like that, I ended up working with Alan subsequently and was at the Rugby World Cup in 2003 as well as a result of my time with Today FM, which was probably one of the greatest weeks in Irish sport on foreign fields. You had, you know, Ireland played Australian rugby on the Friday, on the Friday in international rules. Saturday they played each other in the Rugby World Cup, and Tuesday Dermot Weld had a winner in the Melbourne Cup.
Oh, yeah.
You know, myself and former Wexford goalkeeper Damien Fitzhenry were both at that. And I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but I remember he was mad about Kieran McGeeney at the time.
Right.
And I think I'm paraphrasing now, but we went up. Damien was like a young fella going up to meet the geezer, you know,
Yeah.
and he wanted him to sign his autograph and all this. So I think Madonna may have said this before as well, where someone went up to her and said, "Hey, I've always wanted to meet you," i.e. insert Madonna or the geezer here. Yeah, well now you have. So
really,
Damien felt it, you know, he probably sensed Kieran McGeeney probably sensed that there was a bit of a fangirl coming off.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a bit awkward. But anyway, look, it's all fine and we're all good. We're all able to laugh about it now, you know. But that was just, you know, Alan obviously was centre stage at that stage. He got to try to get Ireland to a World Cup quarter final.
Broke his shoulder, didn't he? Or dislocated his shoulder going over the line.
Don't forget about that either. But thankfully,
No, I've hosted a few things with him. He was my school's coach in rugby.
Way.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that explains a lot.
Yeah, rough as fuck we were. Both purely based to him, like, you know what I mean. But it was, I mean, no, like when that thing happened with Leo Cullen and all the rest of it, and it was an unintentional. But I mean, he played on the edge. You know what I mean. That's why everybody loves him. Yeah. You know what I mean. He was a savage.
He was wholehearted.
Yeah.
And we had great times meeting these guys. You know, and again, I suppose as the media changed, you know, there was a lot of rawness there that you just wouldn't get today. Like the likes of Peter Clossy, for example, springs to mind immediately.
Burning his arm, burning rubbish out the back of his house at times.
Shout out to the Claw. Oh, he's an absolute legend. I hosted a gig with Frankie Sheehan, Mick Galway and Peter Clossy in the Sin Bin. I don't know if you know it.
Yeah.
And again, I said to the Claw recently the amount of money that I spent in his place over the years. And it was kind of the Munster Central whenever they had a big win or whatever. Obviously because he was there. But I remember we did a gig there one night when, maybe it was 2008 when Munster were on the bounce back. And we were on stage anyway. And the next thing, it was a Guinness event. Guinness obviously sponsors of rugby.
Yeah.
But drink responsibly.
Yes, of course.
And the next thing I said, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to introduce 3 Munster rugby greats, Mick Galway, Peter Clossy and Frankie Sheehan. And the Claw grabbed the mic anyway to start off and said, Paul, look, you're only half right there. Or 2/3 right. I said, what do you mean? Well, I can understand why myself, Peter Classy, and Mick Galway are on the stage. Well, what's Frankie doing there? So he wore 16 in his back more times than not. He was on the bench more times than he played, sure. He was known as Splinters. Or actually, no, I'm wrong. Judge. We used to call him on Judge because he was on the bench for so long. So, yeah, he's good crack.
But there's no let up. In that same venue, I hosted a thing with Alan Quinlan, and it was great. It was for Heineken. We're chatting away. Everybody seemed to be enjoying the situation, but it was a gang of lads. Now, I'd played 20s for Shannon, but it made no odds. But Alan was Mr. Shannon. Gang of Shannon lads came in and just basically heckled us the whole way.
It's a strange Irish thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the player who's played inter-county going back to play club, and hey, I'll put you in my back pocket now.
Yeah.
You might think you're a great lad. And the same applies, if you've been abroad or you're...
Oh, yeah.
I always remember there was a certain lady, when Today FM started... it had its challenges.
Yeah, no doubt.
In that, I think the first listenership book was around 1 or 2%.
Right.
And now, for us at the time, there was kind of a gallows humour there because, look, we're on a journey and we're no mortgages or anything. Sure, if it works out, it works out. It doesn't show us a bit of crack. But I always remember meeting this girl on the main street in Tiptown, which kind of throws to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
On Bank Place, and I always remember she may or may not have worked in Tipperary Midwest Radio.
But she heard it down the town.
And she said to me, she says to me, Paul, things aren't going too well above in Dublin at the moment, are they?
Oh, my...
And I said, no, they're not. But sure, we'll do the best we can to get through it and onwards and upwards. Yeah, I'd say you're fair sorry you left Tiptown now.
God.
And I said, well, actually, would you believe I'm not? From listening to the likes of you. So, look, it's just one of those things that goes on,
It's an Irish thing, though, isn't it? I need to take you down a peg there now, just...
But I think, as long as it doesn't go too far... Because
No.
With Rosenstock, for example, I would, just to wind him up, grudgingly say, hey, you weren't too bad today. But I would really ham up if I heard him on advertising car parks.
Yeah.
Or nappies. Yeah. Rosenstock, that's so mad you have going there, kid. Come here, will you get us a discount on the car parks there? How much are they? How much are the cards? But that was a sense of some of the crack we had. It was great times.
Fantastic. I mean, I know we got to get out the door here, but you're moving on to pastures greener.
Well, I don't know if they're greener, Tom. Someone said to me, how is self-employment going?
Yeah.
And I said, well, look, I was in Punchestown all last week, so not too bad at the moment.
That's all right.
But look, I'm fortunate that I have an opportunity now to spend a bit of time working on a company I set up a few years ago called Ballywarm Media. And
great name.
Well, there's a long story about the name, the short version of which is in the days before mobile phones and GPS and all that, and mapping. When we're out in the aforementioned Osty Crows in Dundrum, certain people would say, where are you from? And to disguise the fact, for various reasons, strategically and otherwise, where are you from, boys? We're from Ballywarm. So I always thought that's a good name if ever it comes up. And of course, today, if people say, where'd you get the name? I say, well, Bally, uniquely Irish, and wire, like communication. And they kind of go, oh, yeah, very good. So, so what we do, basically, Tom, is we are like an online or an on-demand newsroom. So if you've company news or if you've an event that's coming up that's important to you, we capture that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a christening now. We haven't done any of those yet, but mainly company events.
I was going to say, we have a young fella on the way.
Yeah, we have a young fella there. He's making his confirmation. So we've been fortunate to work with a number of great partners in recent times. AIG is one.
Right.
The GA and others.
Yeah.
And as a result of all that, it's a great company, great people in it, and I unfortunately haven't been working in it too much in recent times. My parents were quite ill in recent years.
Right,
and I took the time out to mind them, so which I gladly did. And I suppose now, when the opportunity arose, I said, look, there's clear blue water ahead.
Yep.
I feel that, the business of multimedia content is something I'd like to be involved in, no more than yourself.
Yeah.
And, it's a case of trying to see if this is something that is viable for me personally long term.
Yeah.
So I just said, look, sure, we'll give it a lash. What's the
Give it
worst
a
that can
lash.
happen?
Do you know what would be great? And it'd be right.
A podcast.
A podcast would be great.
Well,
You know, I think you'll be. Well, you have a voice for radio, clearly.
thank
so
you.
yeah.
Tip FM wouldn't agree with you now. But anyway.
Do you know what we actually went? And it was Bernard Jackman was on. We were talking about the AIL. That wouldn't it be fantastic when Energy now are coming in, get you into film the match, because there's some cracking matches, at least from quarterfinal onwards.
Yeah, and this is without any. What did they say? Without prejudice.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think the AIL. It's a bit like the club scene at home.
Yeah.
In GA, right? Like, it's a great product, and it'd be great to see more done with it. And you know, I mean, ultimately, like anything in any walk of life or in any business or in any organisation, Tom, if you're losing touch with the grassroots, you're losing.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's great to have these professional rugby players now, and you know, ultimately to have an academy system and all that. But you know, rugby is still important to the grassroots in Ireland.
Yeah.
And I think, to be honest with you, you know, the early days of Munster, which is where we would probably have visibility of more so than most. You know, really, I think the fact that, you know, a lot of, and this isn't in any way critical of the current standard of player in Munster, because, you know, the game is where it is today. But at the time, I think a big selling point was in the start of the professional era is that you knew Mick Galway from Kerry, Ron Lagarris from Cork, Peter Stringers from Cork, Quinlan from Limerick Junction. And I think, you know, it'd be an awful shame if, you know, all the provinces in Ireland were, you know, imports.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that we don't need foreign help, but ultimately that raises the question then, you know, where does the AIL fit into all this?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions there that need to be answered probably, you know, and far more well-paid and eminent brains than ours, Tom, will be probably charged with answering those questions.
And that's the beauty of podcasts. We can pretend like we're smart and just talk about these things.
And can I ask you, I'll interview you now.
Yes.
Who's been your favourite, apart from today, obviously? Who's been the favourite person you've had on?
I've been trying to get Alan Quinlan on, but he keeps on running away from me.
Okay, well, someone who's been on, who's been your favourite?
Do you know what? I really liked
You should have
Bernard.
listened to the question first, because that's what I asked you. But anyway, go on, it's fine. Bernard,
I think Bernard Jackman was very good. He's very open.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Very fast and very open. I like Dave McSavage too. Is good crack.
I heard Bernard recently. Actually, he was on the Leinster game. I don't know Bernard well, but I've met him a few times, and we're on LinkedIn saying we'll have to meet for coffee, because that's my new thing now. So anyone listening to this, if you want to meet for coffee, that's the new thing now, lads.
You're paying though.
Yeah, obviously. But I heard him on. He was on RTE commentating on with Michael Corcoran, commentating on the Saracens Leinster game, which unfortunately Leinster lost. Although you wouldn't have known there was a lot of sadness in the Ronan O'Gara household had you been listening to the Ian Dempsey show on the Monday morning. However, Bernard said something. He was great on it because, you know, I mean, ultimately, Tom, I think whether it's a podcast, whether it's online, whether it's a sketch or on stage, I think you have to say something that people would relate to.
Yeah.
And the French referee was talking, and anyway, Bernard said, "Oh yeah, it's a 22-yard dropout or whatever the case may be." So Bernard was able to interpret the French referee, or French official, and whatever. And Michael Corcoran said, "Well, one of the real benefits, Bernard, of having you on board is that you've got French, and hence you're able to provide us with a very accurate and up-to-the-minute interpretation of the rules of rugby here today." And Bernard replied, "Yes, well, I will add that as a separate line on the invoice translation services to RTE." And there was a very nervous pause after that. Well, anyway, on with the play here.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
So I thought that was good. So you like Bernard Jackman? Anyone else?
Samantha Mumbo was good crack, because our opening 20 minutes was rowing about boxing.
Okay.
Do you know when people?
I'll have to listen back to that one.
Yeah, when people, I just like when people just when they visibly enjoy the situation.
I'd like to meet someone who's in that bracket, obviously, because I'm not. I have to say, I'm going to be very straight. No, I'm joking, obviously. No, it's a very. I think. Look, we don't do a lot of it, Tom. Just stopping and talking to people anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and like I find, you know, even in my own world, like one of the things, you know, in self-employment, when you're in there, like a big challenge is if you're working 40 hours a week or you're working whatever hours you're working and suddenly you're changing, I've had to try and get order on things, you know.
Yeah.
It's 9 o'clock. What am I meant to be doing now? Or it's 10 o'clock. Or, meetings and all that. Now, I've said on LinkedIn there recently that one of the things that I'm trying to get up to speed on is hashtag networking.
Yeah.
Or meeting lads or whatever. So, as I said, shout out on the LinkedIn there.
Jeez, you were flinging out business cards there, left, right, and centre,
like
walking in the
snuff of
door.
the wake, sure. Like confetti. You know?
Oh, I love the notion that if we finish here, that the wife is going to be sitting out in the Pajero waiting outside for you.
Is your wife sitting outside there now waiting for you?
The fucking high is.
You better have the dinner on.
I left her with 2 ice creams, so she'll be all right.
And come here, what do you believe is the purpose of your podcast?
Yeah, happiness.
Right.
Happiness, yeah.
How's that going for you? Happiness for you or happiness for the
other
listener?
people? For other people. My goal is I love talking to people. Yeah. I love talking to people, and we talked before, and I really don't. I'm not. People want to be melancholy and they have some deep stuff to talk about, but I don't know how qualified I am to talk about that. If somebody has, I suppose mental health issues and stuff. So what I like to get out of people is that they had a good time as well.
I mean, it's one of the things that actually informed my view of the world in terms of where I'd like to go.
Yeah.
So in other words, I think, if there's good crack and if there's, is it all about the money at the end of the day? Like if you're enjoying yourself.
No, it's not.
And if you're doing what you want to do and if you do what you feel your purpose is, I think that's one of the big things, Tom, as we get deeper and deeper into serious topics. But I'll just make this observation. I think, you were talking about my mother earlier, kind of saying, look, do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that is kind of a new idea.
For Irish people, it definitely is.
I feel sorry for people who go home. And there's an escape in going to Dublin or going to Cork or going away from the big city where you're on your own. Because if you go home, people say, oh, not married yet, no kids yet, no job yet. You're still in that. Actually, I spoke to, there is a humorous aspect to this. But an awful lot of people are stuck in jobs that don't want to be in.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's who messaged me. Your people's going, you're getting me through the fucking day.
Well, if that is your purpose, I'll share this one, right? I was in Kilkenny one night in the tennis club.
Right.
Don't ask, right?
Okay.
A fella said, look, we're down to town. And I love going out in Kilkenny. And I lived in Kilkenny and it was a brilliant time. And it's all about hurling and crack and everything else. And it was brilliant. But this particular night, anyway, I found myself in the tennis club and I found myself talking to a former Kilkenny hurler.
Right.
Won't say who it was now.
Okay.
For reasons that will become apparent in the seconds ahead. And he was telling me why he should be the next manager after Brian Cody.
To have the nuts to say that.
Oh, listen, which is one of the very reasons why you probably won't be the next manager after Brian Cody, because you say you're going to be the next manager after Brian Cody. And he also said, well, first of all, intro, right? What's that Tipperary bollocks doing down here?
Sound.
Which is normally the case when, Tip lads end up chatting to former Kilkenny hurlers. But anyway, I kind of said, oh, yeah, good one, yeah. And he ended up burning my ear for about, I'd say, a good hour and a half. Right?
Oh, fuck.
So that was fine anyway. So then his wife came over, and she was a primary school teacher.
Yeah.
Now, there's a whole show about primary school teachers to be done, by the way. How many weeks of the holidays do we have? How many holidays are we this year? Anyway, so she said to me, who are you now?
Oh,
and she'd been a primary school teacher for, I think, 20 years or 25 years. Yeah. Who are you? Paul is my name. I'm from Tipperary. Yeah, and what are you doing? I'm working in a radio station. What radio station are you working in? Today FM. Okay, yeah. And can I ask you, are you happy that is your entire life's worth?
What?
And I said, would you believe I am? Are you?
Fuck.
So I think there's a lot of people out there, Tom, who kind of are. So what happens is they didn't get conditioned into the whole business of the fact that, well, I'm pissed off, I'm going to piss you off as well.
A handful of times.
It's good. It's nice. Like, people just want to, most people just want to go out and have a decent chat and in a safe environment where you're not getting an onslaught of your sexuality, your parentage, your skin colour, or the type of car you're driving, which I bought for €400.
Yeah, but that's, a few times that woman, the way you did it, I've gotten that a few times and there'll be drink on board and you'll have somebody talk, they'll see me do 30 minutes on that stage, but afterwards they go, is this
Does that actually go on?
Is this what you do? You do this? Yeah. You're like, yeah. Can you believe they fucking pay me well to do it as well? Can you believe that?
I actually can't believe that. You need to send me some notes on this stuff. to be honest, But look, it's look. I think one of the other things I'd be strong on, Tom, is helping anyone who's trying to start something.
Yeah.
I think, look, it's very difficult in life and in business and in general to meet people who support you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, we're not getting into the political arena, but ultimately, I think what I find in my case, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, I don't feel I was working for the last 22 years, even though
that's class.
My bosses would probably say you didn't seem like that when you were in wages negotiations. But anyway, it didn't seem like work for the last period of time that it was. But what I find now, I find three types of people reaching out to me now.
Yeah.
Or if I meet them on the street, either one, they don't care who you are, where you're from, and have no interest in you or no interest in talking to you. It's just, well, how are you going? Good luck. The second type of person is someone who maybe has done that themselves and had a big change in their lives and are mad to meet up because they know how difficult it can be. So they meet you for coffee.
Yeah.
They say, look, let's have a coffee. There might be things we can be doing, or I can suggest things that you can do for your own business. And the third type of person is the person who's actually in a job thinking, I'd actually love to have the gumption to do that.
Yeah.
And again, they want to meet up for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. So, and I only started drinking coffee in recent years, above here in Dublin. But
What's your standard practice up here? Like, you've no choice.
But I do meet. I still do raise an eyebrow when I hear a tip lad saying, "Yeah, give me a flat white there with a bit of soy milk there when you're ready there."
I've done it, and I've changed my accent to do it. I've changed my accent to do it. I won't even order it in my accent. I'll order it with, hey, how's it going? Coconut milk, please.
Very good, yeah. Thank Otherwise you get some baiting when you go back home to Banshee. But Banshee is a lovely part of the world as well, in fairness.
It's not bad. We were on the Aherlow kind of side of it. Like, so Aherlow side of it. So, like, if and Eddie would be up the road, like, so you can see, he was my school principal's brother. When people try to get an idea of what's how Tipperary is like, I go, my school principal was F and Eddie's brother.
The beer is coming out.
Yeah.
Ireland's first viral sensation, Eddie Maroney.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So your outlook is fantastic. I'm very excited. This has been a very positive, very exciting.
Well, I'll tell you, I, without putting too much of a downer on it, I know you don't like that, but I really, my parents' passing had a big impact on me.
Of course.
Tom, because I felt, a lot of my friends, a good few of my friends worked abroad, like in Boston and in Australia and other places and New York. But I felt I had such a good upbringing, I wanted to be there for them in their last days. So having done that, and again, I was saying to you earlier, like, Dad had leukemia.
Yeah.
And he passed away, unfortunately, last year. And, they ran out of medical help for him because of the circumstances surrounding that. So that kind of changed my centre of gravity hugely. And while it was a sad event, I know he'd be saying, lads, would you ever cop on and get on with things and don't be moping? And look, I was fortunate enough to share some great days with them as well over the years. And I think my overriding sense in recent months has been that there's clear blue water ahead now.
Yeah.
And that, look, this is it now. And I think when you're a parent or when you're minding someone in your life who's not well, you put yourself second.
Yeah.
Understandably. So I kind of say, well, look, now it's about just driving it on and trying to be the best version of you can, and having enjoying times. And like I was down at the Munster Championship game at the weekend, Tip in Cork. If you're from Cork, lads, anyone get the result from Páirc Uí Chaoimh at the weekend? I didn't hear it myself, but things like that. I think maybe it's maturity, maybe it's cop on, maybe it's whatever, but. They're things that really resonate and you celebrate more after you've had events like that in your life. So that's my main goal now, is to try and do things like that without so much beer this time. Yeah. So that I can actually remember.
You can actually savor the moments. Yeah. Well, Paul Collins, it's been an absolute treat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very flattered to be asked to do anything at this stage, and especially a podcast that has been around for so long, Tom. And sure, look, it's like talking to a neighbour's child. If that doesn't sound too perverted nowadays.
My thanks again to Paul. Good on you, Paul. Thanks a million for doing that. Right, hit subscribe if this is your first time listening. Give us an old rating too. If you haven't yet and you're listening on the old Apple devices of any sort, give us a rating. Give us a 5-star rating. To mind any of them other ones, they're no use to us. And less than 5 stars, no use. But it helps to drive it up the charts. More people listen, hence we get more Patreons and whatnot, and all is better for everybody involved. So do give it an old rating. If you want to follow me on any social platform, go ahead. Buckshot Pod on Twitter, or you can find me, Tom O'Mahony Comedy will find me pretty much everywhere. Chatty Snaps, of course, is Tom Bear O'Mahony. But if you need to send me a long form, shoot it on over to buckshotpodcast@gmail.com. TomO'Mahony.com/gigs for any of the gigs. There you are now, lads. Sit back, enjoy the rest of the weekend, and I'll talk to you again on Tuesday.